It all started on a Monday morning, one of those crisp days when everything feels calm and predictable until someone decides to ruin it. I was heading out to work, coffee in one hand, keys in the other, when I stopped dead in my tracks. There it was again, Karen's shiny silver SUV parked right across my driveway, blocking me in completely. It wasn't the first time, either. She'd been doing it for weeks, pretending it was some sort of innocent mistake. Every time, I'd have to knock on her door, wait for her to come out in her robe and sunglasses, and act like I was the one inconveniencing her. I'd asked her politely to stop. I'd even left notes. But nothing worked. She seemed to take it as a challenge. I stood there for a minute, just staring at the car, steam rising from my coffee, irritation building in my chest. I could already hear her voice in my head, that smug tone she used whenever she reminded me that the HOA technically controlled the street. According to her, that gave her the right to park wherever she wanted. I'd heard enough of her excuses to last a lifetime. I took a deep breath, trying not to lose my temper, and walked over to her front door. 3 sharp knocks echoed in the still morning air. After a moment, the door swung open, and there she was, her hair wrapped in a towel, a phone in her hand, and that fake surprised look plastered across her face. "Oh," she said in that syrupy tone, "is there a problem?" I gestured toward her SUV. "You're blocking my driveway again, Karen." She glanced over my shoulder, pretending to look shocked. "Oh, that I must have forgotten. I was in a rush this morning." I clenched my jaw. "You've been forgetting for 3 weeks straight." "I've asked nicely. I even left notes. You can't keep doing this." She smiled, the kind of smile that wasn't really a smile at all. "Relax," she said. "It's just a car. I'll move it when I finish my coffee." I blinked at her. "Move it now, please. I have to leave for work." Her smile dropped, and her tone sharpened. "You don't have to take that tone with me. The HOA allows temporary parking on the street. If you have an issue, you can take it up with them." Then she shut the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, my blood boiling. This wasn't just about parking anymore. It was about control. Karen loved to flex her little bit of power, the same way she nitpicked everyone's lawn height and sent out reminder notices about trash bins. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. The car didn't move. Finally, I called a tow truck. I wasn't going to let her hold me hostage every morning because she wanted to feel important. When the tow truck arrived, the driver took one look and grinned. "She blocking you again, huh?" he asked. Apparently, I wasn't the only one she'd annoyed. He hitched up the SUV, and within minutes, it was gone. I left for work finally free of that metallic blockade. When I got home later that day, I barely made it through the front door before I heard the yelling. Karen was standing in my driveway, red-faced and furious. "You had no right?" she screamed. "You had my car towed. That's illegal. I'm calling the HOA." I dropped my keys on the counter and stepped outside calmly. "You were blocking my driveway. I gave you plenty of warnings. You ignored them. So, I called a tow truck." She jabbed a finger at me. "This isn't over. The HOA will fine you for this. I'll make sure of it." She stormed off before I could even respond. The next day, I got a letter from the HOA, hand-delivered, of course. It was a notice of violation claiming I had unauthorized a vehicle removal from a community road. They were demanding an explanation and threatening a fine. I couldn't help but laugh. Karen really had called in reinforcements. I wrote back immediately, attaching photos I'd taken that morning showing her car blocking my driveway and explaining that the street section in question was registered as part of my property easement. The HOA didn't reply, at least not right away. But Karen didn't stop. Over the next few days, she doubled down on her petty campaign. She parked closer and closer to the edge of my driveway, sometimes leaving just a few inches of space, smirking whenever I pulled in or out. Once, I caught her standing outside with her phone, filming me like she was waiting for me to do something wrong. Another time, she left a note on my mailbox that said, "Maybe you should move your driveway if it bothers you so much." I tore it up and threw it away. That's when I decided enough was enough. I wasn't going to lose sleep over her nonsense anymore. I started documenting everything, every photo, every note, every encounter. And I began planning something she wouldn't see coming. If Karen wanted to play games with parking, I was going to make sure she regretted it. The next time she blocked me in, I didn't call a tow truck. I waited. Late that night, after the neighborhood went quiet, I went out with a tape measure and some cones. I measured the exact boundaries of my property and installed a small chain barrier with reflective signs marking the line. I didn't block the road, I just made it clear where my driveway began. The next morning, sure enough, she parked right across it again, probably thinking she was being clever. But this time, when she came outside, her SUV was surrounded by cones and a bright orange notice taped to her windshield, "Private property vehicle in violation reported." She looked around, furious, scanning for me, but I wasn't outside. Instead, I was watching from my office window, coffee in hand, smiling as she stomped around in her robe, muttering to herself. Within minutes, another tow truck arrived, only this time, it wasn't me who called. The HOA had. Apparently, my letter and evidence had finally gotten their attention. They reviewed the property lines and realized Karen had been parking on private land all along. The board had sent her a notice warning her not to park there again, but she ignored it. So, the HOA's own towing contractor came and removed her car. I couldn't have scripted it better. That evening, she knocked on my door again, fuming. "You think you're clever," she hissed. "This was your doing." I shrugged. "Nope. That was the HOA. Maybe next time you'll read the property maps before parking illegally." She glared at me, speechless for once, then stormed off. After that, her SUV never came near my driveway again. In the end, I didn't have to do much. Karen's own arrogance took care of her. She spent weeks trying to make my life miserable, convinced she could get away with anything because of her HOA status. But the truth was simple: rules don't protect people like her when they're wrong. Sometimes, all it takes is patience, proof, and a well-timed tow truck to remind a Karen that not everything revolves around her. The morning after Karen's car got towed, things in the neighborhood felt unusually tense. People whispered when I walked by, and I could see blinds shifting as I passed. Word had spread fast, and Karen, of course, was telling anyone who would listen that I had violated her rights and illegally targeted her. I tried to ignore it and go about my day, but it wasn't long before things escalated. Around noon, as I was trimming some branches near my driveway, a police cruiser pulled up. The officer rolled down his window and called out my name. "You the homeowner here?" I nodded, confused. "We got a report of harassment and property damage," he said, glancing at his notepad. "From your neighbor, a Ms. Karen." I sighed and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Let me guess, about her car." He gave a small smirk like he already knew. Mind if we talk? I led him over to the driveway and explained everything, how she'd been blocking me repeatedly, how I'd asked her nicely, how I'd documented everything and even notified the HOA. I showed him photos, timestamps, and even the written acknowledgement from the HOA confirming that section of road was part of my property easement. The officer nodded as I went on, clearly getting the picture. So, he said finally, she parked here after being told not to, and the HOA had her car towed. I nodded. Exactly. He closed his notepad and let out a small chuckle. All right. Sounds like she left that part out. Just then, Karen came storming out of her front door like she'd been waiting for her moment. Officer! Officer! She shouted, pointing at me dramatically. That man is harassing me. He had my car stolen off a public street. The officer turned toward her, calm but firm. Ma'am, we've already reviewed the property line and the HOA's report. It appears your car was parked illegally on private property. Her jaw dropped. What, that's ridiculous. I've lived here for 10 years, everyone parks there. He didn't flinch. That doesn't make it legal, ma'am. She glared at me like she wanted to set me on fire with her eyes. He's lying. He's manipulating the HOA. I folded my arms. Karen, I literally have documents proving it. You can check with the county. She sputtered for a moment, then crossed her arms and stomped back to her porch, muttering something about lawyers and revenge. The officer turned to me and gave a small grin. I think we're done here. Try to stay civil, all right, I nodded. Believe me, I'm trying. As he drove away, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But I underestimated how far Karen would go once she felt humiliated. That night, around 10 p.m., I noticed headlights flashing through my window. When I peeked outside, I saw Karen standing in front of my driveway again, this time taking photos and videos. Her phone's flashlight flickered as she whispered into it like she was recording evidence for a crime show. I opened my door and called out, "Can I help you?" She jumped but quickly recovered. "I'm documenting your harassment," she snapped. "You've been tampering with my property." I stared at her, incredulous. "Your property, you mean my driveway?" She ignored me, still recording, narrating something about unsafe structures and violations. I turned around and went back inside, deciding she wasn't worth the argument. The next morning, I woke up to find a fresh HOA notice taped to my door. Pending investigation, it read in bold letters. Apparently, Karen had filed a complaint accusing me of unapproved property modifications, referring to the reflective chain barrier I had installed. I couldn't believe it. She was now trying to use the HOA to punish me for protecting my own driveway. I called the HOA office immediately, and after being placed on hold for what felt like an hour, I finally got through to one of the board members. "Yes, we received a complaint," she said in a dry tone. "But we also have your documentation on file. We'll review everything and get back to you." For a few days, I heard nothing. Meanwhile, Karen strutted around like she'd already won. I'd see her talking to neighbors, gesturing toward my house, clearly spinning some story about how I was the problem homeowner. But karma, as they say, doesn't forget an address. The following week, the HOA held a special meeting to review the case. I didn't plan to attend at first, but curiosity got the better of me. When I walked into the community center, I could feel every eye on me. Karen was seated near the front, arms crossed, lips pursed. When it was my turn to speak, I calmly explained the situation again, showing the same evidence: the photos, the easement map, and even the emails from the HOA themselves acknowledging the boundaries. Karen tried to interrupt several times, insisting I was lying and doctoring documents, but the board members kept shutting her down. Finally, one of the members cleared his throat and looked directly at her. "Mrs. Karen, based on the documentation and our records, the section in question is indeed private property. Furthermore, repeated violations have been documented by both the homeowner and the HOA patrol." The room went silent. Karen's face turned bright red. Then came the best part. The board member continued, "Additionally, we've received multiple complaints from other residents regarding your parking habits and behavior toward neighbors. We'll be issuing a formal warning for harassment." Karen's jaw dropped. "Harassment me?" she gasped. "He's the one," but they cut her off. "Enough," the chairman said firmly. "This discussion is closed." I could almost hear the collective sigh of relief from the neighbors who'd been silently rooting for me. When the meeting ended, I walked past Karen without saying a word. She glared at me, eyes cold and vengeful, but for once, she had nothing to say. I knew it wasn't over, though. People like her never admit defeat, they just retreat and plan their next move. And sure enough, the next day, I caught her out front again, pacing by her driveway, phone in hand, looking around suspiciously. I ignored her, but something told me she was up to something new. That night, I noticed something strange. My security camera light flickered for a moment, like someone had walked past. When I checked the footage, my suspicion was confirmed. Karen had been creeping around the edge of my property, probably hoping to catch me doing something illegal she could report. But she made a mistake. My cameras had a wide field of view, and they recorded everything, including her face. I saved the footage and decided to pay a visit to the HOA office in person the next morning. When I showed them the video, they were speechless. "She was trespassing," the board member said, eyes wide. On camera I nodded. "I'm not looking to press charges, but I think it's time someone told her to stop." They agreed. Later that afternoon, a formal letter was hand-delivered to her house, warning her that further harassment or trespassing would result in HOA disciplinary action and possible police involvement. That evening, she stayed indoors. No cars parked across my driveway. No phone lights flashing outside my window. For the first time in weeks, the street was quiet. I sat on my porch, sipping a cold drink, watching the sunset, and thinking how ridiculous the whole situation had become. All this chaos because one person couldn't admit they were wrong. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't done. People like her never are. They wait, simmering, until they think they've found the upper hand again. Only this time, I was ready. Whatever she planned next, she had no idea what kind of surprise I had waiting for her. For a few blessed days, everything was quiet. No more shouting, no more cars blocking my driveway, no more HOA letters slipped under my door. I started to think maybe, just maybe, Karen had finally given up. I went about my days in peace, enjoying the calm that had returned to the neighborhood. But with someone like her, peace never lasts long. It was a Friday evening when I noticed something strange. A delivery truck pulled up outside her house, and two workers started unloading boxes. They carried them toward the fence that separated our property's large crates, each marked with bright red letters that read "Pool Equipment." I frowned. Karen had mentioned once how she wanted her own private pool but wasn't approved by the HOA yet because her backyard didn't meet the safety setback. Watching her grin smugly as she directed the workers, I could already tell she planned to ignore those rules completely. Over the next week, the noise was unbearable. Early mornings, late evenings, constant drilling, shouting, and hammering. When I peeked over the fence one afternoon, I couldn't believe my eyes. She wasn't just installing a small pool, she was building a massive one, stretching dangerously close to my property line. The workers had even moved her construction materials onto a few feet of my land. I took photos, sent a polite email to remind her of the boundary, and got no reply. Instead, the next day, I found a handwritten note shoved under my door. "Stay out of my business," it said in sharp, looping letters. That was all the confirmation I needed she was up to something she knew she shouldn't be doing. A few days later, I got my answer. I came home from work to find Karen standing in my driveway again, but this time she wasn't yelling, she was smiling. "Thought I'd let you know," she said sweetly, "I'll be using your side entrance for a few weeks. The workers need access for the pool installation." I laughed out loud. "You mean my property?" I asked. "No, Karen, you're not using it. Move your materials off my land." Her smile faltered. "You don't own that side, it's shared community access," she snapped. "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "here's the county survey showing otherwise." I showed her the map, and her expression twisted from fake confidence to pure anger. "This isn't over," she hissed, and stomped away. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of yelling again, but not from Karen this time. The HOA inspector was in her backyard, clipboard in hand, looking around with wide eyes. I stepped outside, pretending to check my mail, and overheard snippets of the conversation. Apparently, someone had reported her unauthorized pool construction. The inspector was not pleased. "This isn't on the approved list," he said sternly. "And you've built too close to the property boundary, you're in violation." Karen tried to charm her way out of it, of course, waving her hands and claiming she had verbal approval, but the inspector wasn't buying it. He left with a warning that she'd be fined and possibly forced to dismantle the pool if she didn't comply. That night, she came banging on my door again. "You reported me!" she screamed. "You can't stand to see me happy, can you?" I opened the door just a crack. "You did it to yourself," I said calmly. "You broke the rules." She was seething. "You think you're so clever, don't you? You'll regret this." And with that, she stormed off into the night. I didn't see her for a few days after that, and honestly, I didn't care. I thought she was finally facing the consequences she deserved. But then, one weekend, I found out she wasn't done at all. On Saturday afternoon, I caught her sneaking around the side of my property again, only this time, she wasn't filming or yelling. She was carrying something. When I got closer, I realized it was a set of keys. My gate lock had been changed. She had actually replaced it with her own. I couldn't believe it. "Karen!" I shouted. She froze, then turned with that same smug look. "Since your gate's on the property line," she said coolly, "I decided to make it a shared entrance. It's for community access." I took a deep breath, trying not to lose it. "You have 30 minutes to remove your lock, or I'm cutting it off." Her eyes narrowed. "Touch it and I'll call the cops." She wasn't bluffing. The second I went inside to grab my bolt cutters, I saw her pacing on the phone through the window, her voice raised and dramatic. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, another police cruiser rolled up. The same officer as before stepped out, looking like he already regretted being there. Evening, folks, he sighed. What's going on now? Karen jumped in immediately. He's threatening to destroy my property, she shrieked. I crossed my arms. She replaced my gate lock with hers. On my fence. On my land. The officer turned to her slowly. You changed his lock. She hesitated. It's community property. He shook his head. Ma'am, the survey and HOA records clearly show this fence is his. You can't do that. Her face went pale, but she still tried to argue. He's lying. He's been harassing me for weeks. The officer turned back to me. Sir, just cut the lock off. If she interferes again, call us. Then he gave her one last look. And ma'am, you might want to stop before this turns into a legal issue. I cut off the lock right there in front of her, the metal snapping with a satisfying click. She stood frozen, fists clenched, trembling with rage but saying nothing. I walked back inside, locked the gate with my own padlock, and decided I'd had enough. That night, I started working on something. If Karen wanted to play territorial games, I was going to teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. Behind my property, near the small creek that ran along the backyards, I had an old shed and a gravel lot I rarely used. Over the weekend, I turned it into a secure parking area, complete with new fencing and security cameras. Then I filed a small permit request to have the HOA officially recognize it as a private zone, inaccessible to the general neighborhood. Within a week, it was approved. The kicker: it cut off Karen's easiest access path to her illegal pool area. When she realized what I'd done, she lost it completely. She came out screaming, demanding I take it down, saying I was ruining her property value. But this time, she couldn't do anything. I had the paperwork, the HOA's approval, and even the cops on my side. Her face turned bright red as she shouted, "You'll regret this. I'll make sure you're kicked out of this community." I just smiled. Good luck with that. A month later, the HOA sent her the final notice: remove the pool or face daily fines. She fought it for a while, then gave up. The construction crew came back, not to build, but to tear it down. As I watched from my porch, I couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. She had spent months trying to control everyone around her, but in the end, her arrogance caught up with her. Now, when I walk outside, I see peace again. No cars blocking my driveway. No HOA letters. No yelling. Karen still lives there, but she avoids me completely. Sometimes I catch her looking over the fence, eyes full of resentment, but she never says a word. I think she finally learned that not everyone will let a bully push them around. Some of us fight back, and when we do, we make sure the lesson sticks.